host as the impartial one. And hello everyone. Welcome to a X-Bound special. This is a look of the Monday Night Wars documentary, which is currently showing on the WWE Network. This is part one of a series we're going to be doing where we look at 5 videos each week. And this week it's The War Begins, The Rise of the NWO, Embracing Attitude, The New DA Generation X, and Have a Nice Day. Joining me for this one, as all of them, is James Phoenix.
Hello.
And Marcus Shadow.
Ah! Okay then.
That was loud buzzing.
Yeah, what the hell was that? Did Marcus desync his headset again?
No, I'm just a little far away from the thing, but I'm here. I can hear you.
Fair enough. He said he was far away from it, but fair enough. We couldn't hear you properly because you just noised with some words, but fair enough. And to put this in perspective for people listening, all 3 of us come at this documentary from a very different place. I was always pro WCW. I always liked WWE, don't get me wrong, but I was pro WCW. Marcus was always pro WWE, and James Phoenix really started to pay attention to WWE after the invasion, so he missed out on that, so he's got the new person's perspective, which I think that's kind of interesting because we've got 3 different perspectives going into the Monday Night Wars.
Indeed.
So first up is we have the first video that we have of The War Begins, which was basically informing everyone how the Monday Night War started, with how Eric Bischoff took over WCW. And yeah, what did you guys think about that? Because I assume after we talk about it, we're going to go into more details about what actually transpired.
Ted Turner got into the wrestling business. No? Okay. I thought it was really good. Like I said, I'm generally familiar with some of the events of the Monday Night Wars, but because I started watching just before the invasion or so, right around the invasion, I missed the majority of the Monday Night Wars. I really wasn't. I mean, I watched wrestling occasionally when it was on, but I wasn't a big enough fan into it that I paid attention to exactly when it was on and when to watch it. So if I happened to stumble across it, I'd watch it, but I didn't really know when to watch it. So I was just starting to really get into it at that time. And looking at it, it was interesting to see how this formed up and how, WWE was really at the time the only thing that, was this sort of nationwide product beyond a civil territory. And that WCW was even still like a southern territory. And even when when Ted Turner took it over and put it on TV, it still had that very southern flair to it. And Bischoff had to, had to get rid of that. He had to get rid of the southern announcers. He had to, really bring it up to a national level. And the effort he had to go through to get it to where it was with Raw. Because when I think of WCW, I think of it as an equivalent company to WWE. And it's interesting to see that really, WCW, where it was, it got there very quickly. It wasn't just, that company had been around that long or anything like that. WCW literally came out of nowhere and went from, independent promotion to full-on competitor to WWE very fast, and I hadn't realized it was that quickly.
Yep. Which it still also has some ties, which I don't think the documentary covered it too much, but it has some ties to the old wrestling territories they used to do, which is even before my time, but they used to do territories where, like, if you were in this state, you would watch wrestling on this channel before they had cable and stuff. And a load of the southern wrestling, which is why I don't find the joke WWE always does of wrestling that funny, actually gave us some of the greatest workers of all time and some of the greatest things to do with the business. But when WWE moved to cable and stuff, some of the other ones were just, left behind and was sort of clinging to that era, which I think WCW is one of those where it was more like a territory, even though it wasn't a territory, if that makes sense. Like, it was holding on to being a territory with actual cable thing. Like, they were trying to make it very southern still, which, to its credit, would have worked to a certain degree, but yeah, it needed that Bischoff spark to just ignite the fire.
Yes.
But if Marcus is closer to his microphone now, what does Marcus think? Uh,
Well, the whole Monday Night Wars thing started a few years before I started watching wrestling. So I kind of came in the middle of it because, as I stated before, I came in right around the time that new DX had come around, like after Shawn Michaels got injured and left and Triple H had to form the new one. That's kind of when I started watching. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, as they put it, like the first shots that were fired, how it came about, and like Jim said, just how quickly WWC rose almost down to nothing. And it's interesting to hear the Ted Turner stuff of what his vision was and what he kind of wanted, but the fact of the matter is he knew nothing about the industry or the business or how to do it. Then he brings in Eric Bischoff, who was like, okay, well, if we want to compete with the WWF, then we got to do this, this, that, and the other. And he just started bam, 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 putting things together to the point that with Ted Turner's backing, WWE almost couldn't compete because WWE was kind of stuck in its tradition, and they kind of forced him to change and evolve to compete. And it's kind of interesting just to see that evolution and to see, the big players that were in it that forced that change and the minds behind it. It was very interesting.
it is. It's like I got into it around pretty much near the end of the Hogan era, if that makes sense, because that was like when Undertaker debuted, and I remember all that, because Undertaker even won the title like a year later off Hogan. I loved the new generation that WWE did, but that was a response to WCW, kind of, and Hogan leaving, which in itself was good. And yeah, it was kind of cool to see WCW just rise up. And the way it did it, you're not going to see that again, because even today's standards, you've got companies like TNA, Total Nonstop Action, for people wondering, that have tried similar tactics of like recruiting other members from WWE, and they've tried similar stuff of like, okay, we're just going to shoot in a similar lot to what WCW did. They're never going to get to be WCW anymore. We're never going to get another company that rises up and does it that good. I hope Global Force Wrestling does, but you know what I mean? I don't think we're ever going to get another company rise up like that, because the marketplace now has become such a monopoly that it's not going to happen.
Pretty much. And I mean, the problem is you can't have the kind of shocks and surprises that you had in the Monday Night Wars. The kind of the thing like like things like Razor Ramon and Diesel showing up there with no warning. Lex Luger showing up there the night after he was on WWE. People, who's the one that was on both shows on the same night. You can't have that because of all these no compete clauses and everything else they put in there. So you don't have that unexpected, oh my God, this guy went over to this show. I want to go see what's going on in the other show. You don't have that anymore.
Yep, and like I said, Rick Rude.
Rick Rude, thank you.
Which the closest we had to that was Kurt Angle being announced as going to TNA.
Yeah.
Which did rejuvenate TNA just a little bit, put it on the map a little bit more. However, the mainstream stuff nowadays of people reading all the fucking internet trash was basically like, well, this is why Kurt Angle's going there. It's because he's so injured he can never have another match. So they're not going to do anything with him, which completely must have been a lie, because he went there and he's put on great matches. But because of the internet, it kind of hurt that happening, which is a fucking shame, really.
Yeah.
But after this one, the war beginning, and we see the seed be planted and how it's growing, and Eric Bischoff going from just... Essentially, he was Renee. Back then, he was basically your Renee, and suddenly he got put in charge. Boom. Which, we went from that to probably Eric Bischoff's greatest creation, in my opinion, which is the rise of the NWO. Yep, which the NWO itself, I know a lot of people discredit it because it was WCW's the NWO, must have just killed the company, or it's the NWO, that wouldn't have been good, because they didn't see it, but it was fucking genius. Like, you had Razor Ramon come out and actually say, you know who I am, and not give his name.
You know who we are.
Yeah, thus you thought, okay, it's Razor Ramon, which is great,
Yeah,
and he did it.
Same thing with Diesel.
Yeah, and he did it so realistically too, of in terms of how it was shot, how it looked, and then you had the outsiders, and you had Hogan turn, and boom, NWO. It pretty much printed money.
Yep.
Which I know that term gets thrown around too easily nowadays, but come on, the NWO printed money.
Hmm.
But
You know, until half the roster joined it in a tank.
to be fair though, name one group that hasn't had new members and the whole concept tanked. Because WCW didn't tank just because of the NWO. It tanked because of Vince Russo going there, giving himself too much credit, and also eventually Ted Turner just turned around saying, I don't want a wrestling company anymore."
Hmm.
But the concept was crap when they added half the roster. But to be fair, which we'll go into in another one, DX was crap when they added 3 other people, or when they turned them into a complete jobbers during the McMahon-Helmsley era,
Mm.
or when they reunited them for PG and added Hornswoggle. Exactly. 4 Horsemen. Eventually, they added really ridiculous members. Like I think at one point, Psycho Sid was in there. The group that's meant to be predominantly really great wrestlers. So I think a lot of hatred gets thrown at the NWO from WWE fanboys because of what WWE's told people to think, because they didn't create it. It was a great concept. And people always, as they try to go in the documentary into too much detail about how, oh, it was a concept from Japan. But if you look at the Japanese concept and you look at this one, there was enough differences there. You know what I mean? There was enough differences there between the two, like very different presentations and everything to this degree that it's like, okay, WWE copied Undertaker off, and you could go into like comics with Solomon Grundy rising from the dead or something like that, but you don't. Why? Because WWE won the war, and as people always say, whoever wins the war writes history.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is why part of this documentary is a little biased for my taste, but
Yeah,
it's still pretty good.
there's been some reviews of this series that have, people calling it crap. It's WWE revisionist history and everything else.
To be fair, this is our review.
I know. I'm just saying it's been
Mole
called
makes
out
a
for being a
valid
little biased.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Like I said, it's not as biased as I thought it would be, though, to be fair. But this is the rise of the NWO. What did you think of this, Marcus? Because I know you hadn't experienced the NWO, but it was something you said you kind of wanted to see it rise up and stuff.
Well, I thought it was interesting, and I thought I liked where it came from, and it's interesting to compare it to WWE and just the industry now, because as you pointed out earlier during the review of the first video, what they did then you can't do now at all, and not only because of the rules they have in place, the no compete clauses and stuff, but also because of, like you said, like the internet stuff and the dirt sheets and whatnot, where you can't have like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash just randomly show up. You don't have that shock value anymore. I think if people start adopting Triple H's philosophy, you might be able to, where he, like we mentioned on X Marks just a few minutes ago, of Triple H basically saying, well, because of the rise of the Smark and the rise of the dirt sheets and stuff like that, we're just going to fucking lie to you guys, because if we don't, we can't ever surprise you. And if you do that, then you might be able to pull off something like what they did, but it's never going to have the same impact as the Monday Night Wars. Just because back then you had the sheer what the fuck, because you didn't have the internet, you didn't have dirt sheets, you didn't have anyone who could speculate or anyone who might have inside sources. It was you turn on the TV and you see what the fuck is going to happen. And I think, it's like lightning striking, and like you said, Mole, with TNA and other companies trying to do what WCW did, I have to agree with you. I don't think any company can ever do what WCW did to WWE because just because the times are so different, lightning can't strike twice. Not like that.
It won't. And the other big issue besides them, which I will admit I try not to read that stuff now because I still like the mentality from back then of just watch it and you'll be like, oh my god, that just happened. Like, for example, when The Rock returned and went against Rusev, like you said at the time, holy crap, it's The Rock. But when you spoke to one of our other friends, I'm not going to mention his name or anything, but when you spoke to him, his response was, yeah, but we all saw it coming because the dirt sheet said it. It's like, that's the problem. They're fucking ruining wrestling. Because something as great as oh my god, The Rock just came out, that's a surprise, was completely ruined, and then they'll turn around and bitch at WWE's predictable.
Well, the other thing with that, too, is the dirt sheets didn't say he was going to be at Raw. They said he could be at Raw, but they said he's going to be in New York, which I'm like, okay, he's in New York for other stuff. Just because he's in New York doesn't mean I still expected him to come out.
But they also said he was at Raw, and he was definitely going to appear. And
okay.
he was in New York, definitely going to appear. And other ones also said he was seen backstage before the Rusev bit. And it's like, why are you ruining this?
Yeah.
There's no need to ruin this.
Yeah.
But another aspect, in my opinion, which I don't know if you two would agree with this, with the NWO thing, is the booking. And when I say the booking was another important aspect of it, which won't make it happen again, is WCW back then was desperate to try to win against WWE or try and be number one. They had a goal. They had something they needed to achieve, and desperation does create great results sometimes. You know what I mean? Like the greatest creations are normally out of necessity, and this seems like a necessity. Whereas if you come to modern times, how awesome was the Nexus angle when it first debuted and they destroyed Cena and ripped open the ring? But by today's booking, because they had nothing to gain from that, it turned to complete shit within a month. Or within a couple of... It's like, no.
That's true. That's true.
I can agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what did you think about seeing the NWO and the documentary itself about the NWO? Either one of you two?
I thought it was interesting to see them, young and stuff, because like I said, Diesel and Razor Ramon stuff, that was all before what I started watching. So it was kind of cool to see them, kind of in their prime and hear them cut the promos and just to see how that came about and to see how impactful and influential they were in the Monday Night Wars, because they literally were the first shots of the war, and they were really, really big shots.
They were, which I think... They were really big shots, which I think goes into what we were talking about a second ago, of WWE trying to rewrite history. Because Nash and Hall were such great, impactful things, as a result, you got stuff like when Nash returned with CM Punk and all the stuff WWE constantly likes to put in people's heads, where they're like, oh, well, Diesel was never a draw. Really? You're going to discredit Diesel? He was a great champion. When Diesel was champion, their ratings, when they were saying, yeah, but the WWE ratings went downhill because of Diesel. No, it went downhill because they had competition with WCW, and it started to make that shift a little bit just to try and divide the audience. It had nothing to do with who was on top.
Yeah, absolutely.
But continue, Marcus.
Oh, no, I was just saying it was just really awesome to see them and to see, evolution of their characters and just to see how far... Well, first of all, how far Bischoff was willing to go to make WCW successful, but also to see how far he would be allowed to go because, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, back then you didn't have a lot of the regulations and a lot of the morals that you do now. Not saying that any of the industries are really that moral, but back then you could get away with more. Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting just to see that stuff. And also because, as we discussed, with just the shift in how society works now and how connected we are by information. Back then, not only could you get away with it on an ethical or moral standpoint, but you could get away with it from the standpoint of there's no way for anyone else to know, so it would make a much larger impact. So it made sense to do that back then. if you tried to do anything like that now, it wouldn't have the same impact. So it's just kind of interesting to see all that, and just also to see how smart Bischoff really was, because really my only exposure to Bischoff, aside from the occasional parts of WCW that I would see when the person who would occasionally come in to watch wrestling with us in the dorm, who was a WCW fan, would try to change the channel. The only real exposure to Bischoff I got was when he came to Raw as the general manager. But seeing him in his prime with his mullet, with his power mullet, and seeing how smart he really was in terms of, you want to talk about ultimate opportunist? Edge ain't got nothing on Eric Bischoff, especially with the first 5 episodes that we've seen of the Monday Night Wars thing. Yeah, Bischoff has Edge beat by a fucking mile, because every opportunity that came his way, everything that showed up at his doorstep, that he had the business acumen, he had the foresight to see, wait a minute, I can take this and run with it and shove it straight up Vince McMahon's ass. And he did every single time.
He did. It's like I don't know if Jim would agree or not, but like I said, watching the NWO thing. Like I said, I saw the NWO. I loved the NWO, as I told you guys for a while. But I loved how they actually showed some of the stuff the NWO did right. Like, they were doing like the impersonations before DX when they did the Arn Anderson bit, and they did the whole They did all the stuff like the celebrity integration much better than WWE has, in my opinion, with a lot of stuff of Dennis Rodman, which I still want that hat.
Yeah, the Dennis Rodman hat.
I want that NWO hat, goddammit. But I don't know. What did Jim think?
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, most of my experience with the NWO was the lethal dose of poison version that came in later on in the WWE. So, seeing the original version and realizing how revolutionary the group actually was pretty cool. Because it's hard to without really having explained to you to understand exactly what they meant to the industry without having either experienced it or seeing something like this that kind of recaps it for you. So it really helped me understand exactly the impact they did have and why it was relevant and how it came to be. And explain a little bit more about what I didn't know. Like, for example, when WWE 2K14 came out, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were in there as the outsiders, and I had never been aware of that tag team even existing. That being the precursor of the NWO. I didn't know that until I watched this. I saw them in these weird red costumes. I'm like, I don't remember this group. Like, I guess they were a WWE tag team. I don't know. And then I watched this, and I realized, oh, now I get it. That was what they were before the NWO. Now it makes sense. I didn't understand that before. Now I get it. But, and it was just really cool seeing the history and understanding how the NWO came to be, why it was relevant, and like Marcus said, seeing how desperate Bischoff was to the point that he admitted in some of the interviews that he did things that even he himself disagreed with, but did them because they were, for lack of a better term, best for business.
Yep. Which, well, the third video, because like I said, we talked about 5. The third one is embracing attitude. And I will allow Jim to take this segment away.
Before we do that, I want to say one last thing about the NWO segment. So I just realized something. That the NWO is basically it's the epitome of what we've been saying for quite some time, the three of us on like WXR and X Marks, and like with Richter, the 4 of us, for the past several years of. And if you go back and watch our WXRs and X Marks, you'll notice we say this quite a bit of, come on, WWE, go with this and this. It writes itself. NWO is the proof in the pudding. It's the epitome of this shit writes itself.
Yep.
Because the entire NWO idea, from what I understand, based on what I've seen in these videos, it came about because of real life. It was literally art imitating life at this point. And it's like, you don't see this kind of innovation anymore, because we've sat around and we've talked about different superstars now, and it's like, come on, this writes itself. But WWE is trying to create it artificially now, and it's like to see creativity in its prime, creativity, as you guys have said, born out of desperation, to the point that they will take real life and make it the story and make it what you're going to see on TV. that's the kind of innovation we need to see now, and you don't see that anymore. You're not going to see it anymore because you can't.
Nope. Which
Nope.
I will say, yeah, there's a reason I gave NWO on one of our videos the greatest group of all time. I loved the NWO. However, I will make the case of we did get something like this in modern times, post Invasion. Matt
Okay.
Hardy v Edge.
Kind of, yeah.
That wrote itself, and the way they did Matt coming out and just punching Edge. So you're like, wait, what the fuck? When the security took him away, that was kind of awesome.
It was.
But embracing attitude, Jim.
Indeed. And yeah, it was interesting to see that evolution in. Because you tended to forget that back in the day, yeah, you see all these old Hulk Hogan, Yokozuna, and everything, but you tend to forget just how PG a lot of that stuff was. And you can understand how it could be hard to go from something like that to a lot of the things we saw in the Attitude Era. McFoley and violent matches, and divas walking around naked, and profanity, and all kinds of other stuff they threw in there. It really was a drastic change from what had come before, and it's understandable given the established formula WWE had and how long they've been using it, why it was hard for them to change over to that. But the fact that they managed to pull it off so successfully to combat the NWO was really a testament to WWE's versatility and their ability to, when necessary, make the change. And it's ironic because I think that's interestingly comparable today in that, not necessarily a competitor, but the fans themselves are tired of that same old PG storylines again. They want something new. They want something they haven't seen before. Not necessarily yet Return of the Attitude Era because that's been done, but they want something new they haven't seen before, and WWE is at the point where they're refusing to change. They're not going with it, and so they're losing ratings. But this time, there is no WCW for the fans to turn to, so it's just killing the industry as a whole.
It is. Which, like I said, I would make the case as well of, as I've made in the past, yeah, it was a little different when we watched it back in the day and stuff, but I think PG for WWE, like with the Bret Hart era or now, I think it's just better overall because you can still get the shocking whoa, but it's not overdone to the point where it becomes ridiculous. Wrestlers won't be ending their careers as much, and as well as that, in a world where basically we have people like looking up to, say, like the Kardashians and stuff like that, I find it a lot more nice that kids will have like a John Cena to look up to.
Fair enough.
At least to me, they seem like better role models than what's actually on a lot of places, and it's like I think that's something that's kind of needed.
I can agree with that, and it works. I'm just saying that that's good for the kids, but there's a lot of older fans who they're fine with having some of those heroes, but at the same time, the problem is that their concern is not, because back in the day when you had guys like Hulk Hogan and even into the Shawn Michaels Bret Hart area, their concern was let's put on good stories and good entertaining wrestling. That's what we're going to put on. We're going to entertain the fans. Their concern today is we're going to entertain the kids. We're going to be PG at all costs, even at the cost of story. And that's kind of the problem. Is if their focus was still we're going to write good stories and be entertaining to the people, and not trying to focus on one group of the people, they would probably be a lot better.
I can semi-agree with that. I think they do try to please a lot of different people, but the problem is a lot of people will see like when we had like say, and I did see this with some of them, like when you had CM Punk versus John Cena. Great, really well done storyline. The amount of people complaining there wasn't enough weapons in that, or they didn't bleed and stuff like that, really. It was a great storyline. It was a great moment to experience. And I feel too many people let that slip through their fingers.
Fair enough. It's an interesting observation. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think it's less about the PG-ness because, as Mole put it, PG works.
No, I was saying PG.
And it's and it is better than. As much as I love the Attitude Era, I can totally see the flaws in that and the reasons why PG works. I think the biggest problem today compared to the past, and you can see it, even in the Monday Night Wars videos that we're talking about here, and this is one thing I feel the Attitude Era did better, and that is, as you put it, Jim, focusing on a story, having the talent that can tell that story in the ring, having the talent that can actually do what's necessary to keep that level of entertainment and immersion up. And you just don't see that today. And I don't think it's the roster is entirely to blame. I think there's a lot of incredible talent. We've said it before, talking about the different wrestlers and divas on this roster. There is an incredible wealth of talent on this roster. The blame lies solely with WWE themselves and not using that talent wisely, and in not writing the storylines and the gimmicks properly. And you can see that in the Monday Night Wars, where when WWE was forced to change, when WWE was forced to use the talent they had and to give the fans something new, something that they could latch onto, something that they could use to try to beat WCW, they could do it. But now, without that competition, without that back-to-the-wall need to just bust down and do something fucking crazy, it just seems stale. And I think a lot of the fans feel the same way, that WWE's just gotten stale. And you look at the Monday Night War, and you can see WWE at their best.
The other part of it as well, though, like I said, which we kind of blamed on, I don't think you can blame it all on WWE. I do blame a lot of it on the fans, because whenever WWE tries to do a storyline or something like that right now, people will go and read the dirt sheets and say, oh, well, they're just building to this at WrestleMania. Let's shit all over it.
True. Yeah, I agree.
It's like, well, if you're going to do that, if you're going to read the dirt sheets, if you're going to see all the twists coming, then talk about it all over the place on Twitter and stuff, you wonder why WWE has suddenly closes it down and shuts it down at the last minute. It's because you're ruining it.
True. This is very true.
But I think also it's because back in the day, and not necessarily back then, but one thing they had to do in the Attitude Era was let a lot of talent that they previously had not let shine through, and go out and give them a chance to go out and prove that they could do what they could do. Let guys like Shawn Michaels, Triple H go out and do what they did best, and that was be edgy. Let guys like Mick Foley go out and do what they do best, and that was take punishment, and in the case of those awesome interviews, be dramatic. Let people go out and be who they are and do what they let The Rock go out and be who he was to cut those great promos. Let Austin go out and be a drunk redneck. Let people go out and do what they do, and let them get over because of it. The problem is, instead of letting everybody go out and just be who they are and get over with what they're good at, WWE is picking and choosing who they want to get over and with what. And the problem is the fans are not going to have that anymore. They're going to say, no, we want to go to the people that we want. And yeah, they're probably a little too strict and harsh about it, I agree. But the fact of the matter is that WWE has spent far too long telling the audience what to like instead of listening to what they like.
And I could certainly see a certain degree to that. The other part with... Sorry, I was going to say, yeah, the other part with it as well, with the Attitude Era thing and how it evolved and stuff, is they were letting guys go out there and be all edgy and stuff, but the other thing which we kind of have to address, which will come up eventually during this, because I assume they're going to gloss all over, is important, the Chris Benoit incident shined a giant light on the entire business that if they try to be edgy now, it would kill them.
I was going to say, I think
because
I think, Jim, you missed what Mole was saying. Missed the point of what Mole was saying of the fans really have only themselves to blame for kind of stagnancy, because as Mole pointed out, which I hadn't thought of too heavily about before, and he makes a really good point, it's that WWE, executives and stuff, and Vince and whatnot, are perfectly willing to try stuff, but the problem is the fans won't let them try stuff. The reason they have all these false starts, the reason they do one thing, looks like it's going to be pretty good, and then they quit, is because they are actually listening to the fans, whether we want to believe it or not. And I think sometimes they don't listen to the fans, but I think sometimes they actually do, and we don't give them credit for actually listening to the fans. And I think maybe listening to the fans is actually hurting the WWE, as much as I hate to say it, because as we pointed out before, the fans kind of don't know what they want, or they think they know what they want, but what they want isn't good for business. And I think WWE is so afraid that, if we piss off the fans, we're going to lose too much money. And it's possible that's the case, but it's like, if your fans are that wishy-washy to the point that you can't have any stability within your talent pool, within your writing and stuff, is that really best for business?
Yep. It's like I mentioned with the Benoit thing. And going to the Nexus angle we talked about before, and it's weird because of the place we're at right now, but they let Nexus go out there and do some edgier stuff, and look what happened. Daniel Bryan decided to pretend to choke someone with a tie, and instantly the networks jumped down their throat, and he had to be fired.
That's the other thing about that. That's the other thing about that is the fact that there's a change to the level of risk that they're willing to take. The WWE Network said we can't have we can't have Daniel Bryan choking people with a tie. You have to fire him, and they did. But let's rewind. The network sends a laundry list of things that say DX can't do this, and DX just reads the list on the air and does worse, and it's sanctioned.
Yeah, but let's not also forget this was, like I said, after the Benoit thing. Every news station was talking about how wrestling was bad, how wrestling was filled with steroids, how wrestling had a killer, wrestling had a child killer. The networks this time weren't willing when they had someone choke them right along after, like, for example, the Benoit incident, to turn around and say, we're okay with this because we can see where this is going. They're like, this will remind people of the killer. We will pull your ass off the air. And that's a major difference. Because the networks back then were willing to make a little bit more risks as well. Nowadays, they can't afford it because there's so many networks.
Mm.
It's like, look at what happened with Muhammad Hassan. I assume everyone remembered that.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah.
They tried to go edgy, they tried to go cool with it, and the networks threatened to pull them off the air unless they fired him. So they had to write him off screen, with Undertaker basically last riding him through the stage. Which I think is a major issue nowadays.
Yep.
Well, this is why I think that we're heading in a direction where we can actually fix this, honestly. Because if they can pull it off, I think that WWE is at a point where, if they get in this direction over, however long it's going to last, but, give it another, maybe 5 years, depending on, what their audience looks like, how the populace looks, I could easily see WWE choosing not to renew their television agreements and just putting Raw SmackDown all their programming on the network. Because and just putting up lots of commercials and things, the commercials, the advertisers that they normally have, saying we're going to have the advertisers, we can advertise on our network, and putting the ads there, and just treating it like a regular network. Because once they do that, they can do whatever the hell they want. And if parents if parents want their kids watching that, then they don't have to buy the network. Their kids won't watch it. And if other people do want to watch it because they think it's cool, they can buy the network and they can watch it. And because it's I think when you can go month to month, people can come in and out, whatever. And that might be the future of the way to go, where WWE could then finally control exactly what it is they put on there, and they could take those risks without worrying about getting pulled off TV.
They could do, but the other thing if they did that would be the network would have to go up in price, in my opinion, only because the reason Raw is 3 hours long. Yeah, if you fast forward all the adverts, it's only about 2. Is advertisement pays for every little thing we see.
Oh yeah.
But I do agree that putting stuff on the network could be great for WWE if they wanted to go forward. I mean, it's working for NXT. However, I also think WWE right now is willing to start making more risks now. Like, look at what they're doing with Dean Ambrose, which we don't agree with in some regards, but it's still edgier and riskier. Because I think enough time's passed now from the Benoit thing that people aren't as, let's shine a light on how bad they are. Because if they shine a light on what WWE is right now, it's Be a Star campaign. It's Connor's Cure. It's, you know what I mean?
It's immediately following that with Big Show knocking people out because he's bigger than them and he can.
But I was being serious. But yeah, it's a case of, I think that's the valid thing.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. It's a change of the times, and I agree. Part of the big problem is that, back then, they were able to try anything, and then just whatever the fans stuck with, they went with. Whereas today, they really don't have quite that luxury, And, unfortunately, there's a limit to the number of gimmicks that, that people are willing to get over with that. They just want something new. And the problem is WWE seems to have a formula they like to use for a lot of their superstars and their storylines. And they're having trouble breaking out of that mold to come up with anything original. Not necessarily going edgy or violent, but just something original and new. It's just a matter of there's a limitation to the ideas. It's like, even something that hasn't been seen in a while will get over just because it's a little bit different and people want to do that. Look at Brodus Clay. Brodus Clay was random big monster heel. People hated him. He worked for Alberto. People hated him. He was a random big monster dude. Screw that guy. Left. Comes back in a tracksuit, dancing like a dinosaur with scantily clad women to Ernie the Cat's old theme song. People ate it up because it was something random and new that they didn't expect. That's the kind of thing they do. They need to do, back in the day, the most random of gimmicks got over for no good reason. I think that's something that needs to go back to a little bit is, stop sending guys out there as, this is certain people you can do it with. People like, Roman Reigns. Yeah, you might want to do it because he has a very long lineage that you want to talk up, and that's just his lineage. Fair enough. But they send so many guys out there just as their name with or name a particular chant, or he comes out of the crowd and wears black, or whatever it is. They don't do gimmicks anymore, and that's what really sucks. Is that they started doing some gimmicks, and people would get behind it purely because this gimmick is crazy. They got behind Adam Rose because he came out with a dude in a bunny suit and a bunch of random ass people. It was funny. They got into that. Brodus Clay came out again, danced like a dinosaur women. They got into that because it was cool. Fandango disco dances around. People got into that because it was different and new. The most random gimmicks will get over because it's things that people don't expect, and it's things that haven't been done in a long time. If they dug back into their vault and pulled out some gimmicks, I think a lot of that stuff could get over. Hell, when the Nexus debuted, I'll be honest with you, I wish Ryback would go back to his Skip Sheffield gimmick, because when they did the Nexus thing, I'm like, hey, this dude's a cowboy. That's kind of cool. We haven't had a cowboy here since Bob Orton. This is pretty awesome. I'd like to see him pursue this. And he had a great catchphrase. Yep, what to do. Unfortunately,
did you say we haven't had cowboys since Bob Orton?
Well,
did you forget how Billy and Bart Gunn started?
I don't remember them. That was before my time.
They were the Smoking Guns, and they were literally a cowboy tag team.
Okay, so I don't really remember them because it was before my time. Bob Orton just only came into my head. I mean, we've had guys that have a cowboy
gimmick,
cowboy overtone, like JBL, who he was a cowboy, but he wasn't a full-on cowboy. Stuff like that. But really having I thought the Skip Sheffield thing could be a really fun gimmick because in the modern era we haven't really had a cowboy gimmick, and I thought that was gonna be fun. And then they turned him into a generic monster heel again, and I'm like, oh.
Which, the discussion on this bit was the Embracing Attitude video, which was showing why they were doing this, which is why we were talking about this. But another problem, I think, is internet, as I mentioned before, but not the same reason. The reason why is now everyone has access to the internet. Everyone thinks their opinion is the best.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, as a result, WWE may push Fandango, Adam Rose, and stuff, people gimmicks like that. But for every time they did that, for every fan that liked them, there was ones on Twitter and stuff saying, "Boo! You're going back to PG gimmicks. We want it like the Attitude Era. We want it realistic." And they get buried. And then people are like, "We want those gimmicks back." So they try to push them, and it's like, you know what I mean? They're like caught in between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, which I can understand that, but I think they could do something interesting here to actually use that to their advantage. Two things. Number one, like I said, they got the network, even if you're not going to go crazy on it. Do something like this. You have NXT, you have stuff on the network. Say, okay, this is going to be our programming on TV, but set aside, pick a night of the week where you're not doing anything, like, I don't know, how about Saturday? Nothing goes on Saturday in WWE for the most part. How about on Saturday you have an hour, maybe 2 on the WWE Network, and you have some guys go out there and put on a program that is a little more edgy. Maybe it's not necessarily tied to, it's not going to necessarily affect overarching storylines or anything. Have guys go out there and put on some good matches, cut some pros on each other. Even if it took a few guys and made it like its own little brand like NXT, like almost like a main event type thing. And just have them go out there, even if it's at a central arena in one place. Have them go out there, and run a slightly edgier show that those Attitude Era people could get behind, they could watch and enjoy on the network, and they want to watch it. Those people would buy the network and watch it on the network, and they could watch your programming for that and for NXT, and then you could have the programming on TV for the Raw and the SmackDown for the other people who are okay with the PG gimmicks and are okay with this and the other thing. They could split it. Number 2, in terms of the storyline issue of the spoilers and everybody knowing what's going on, WWE could also use that to their advantage because they know this. So all they have to do is, since they know this is happening, leak a bunch of fake information and nobody will know what's real and what's not.
They already have.
That's what they're doing. That's what Triple H said he's been doing. Have you not been paying attention?
Yeah, that's why a load of times the dirt sheets have been wrong. Like, for example, when you talk about gimmicks and stuff, who remembers every single one of the dirt sheets saying that Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods and Big E were just going to be another Nation of Domination because they were black, and suddenly they come out in bright colours, cheerful, happy. They're like a team that actually swaps around members, similar to basically like the Freebirds and people like that had done in the past, which that's something new. That's something great. And it's something that they leaked-ish because people they had to work house shows. And people assumed they were going to be a Nation of Domination. Instead, they're not. They're clearly not.
Yes, which that was a great gimmick and they put it out there. And then they decided that the way to promote that was to spend the entire match talking about Big E's ball sweat. Just saying.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that they did that. But I'm just saying that, yeah, every time they do that with the dirt sheets and stuff like that, some of the information's false. A lot of it is. That's why people say lol dirt sheets. But the fact is, enough of it's real. And the fact is, people won't get it through their thick skulls. Don't read that shit if you want WWE to not be predictable. And they do it. It's like, for example, if I go to watch a TV show like, say, I don't know, Arrow or Flash, the greatest superhero shows on TV right now, if I go to watch them, before it airs, I can't suddenly go over to something like, say, 1,000 Arrow dirt sheets that are telling me, oh, by the way, in this episode, there's a little cameo that's totally going to be there because we've seen every aspect of it. There's still some spoilers, but not to the same degree. And it's just bad. It's bad for business.
Mm.
But I do like like I said, I do like some of the more gimmicky characters. Hell, my favorite character of all time got over with a gimmick with Undertaker, which, to its credit, like WWE have said before now, if you gave that gimmick to most people, they would have been dead within a year.
Yeah. Dead. I see what you did there.
He wasn't dead when he debuted, but it was a case of he actually made it something worth watching.
He did.
It's like Jericho. Come on. Can you imagine if they'd put, say, Ryback in the Jericho jacket and got him to do the poses and come out and say he was the Ayatollah of rock and roller and he's the new millennium? Would that really have sold? Oh, but Jericho made that work. That was a horrible gimmick with the fucking, like he was in tinfoil.
Yeah.
But it worked because of the guy behind it, which is also another aspect.
Right, and that's why, again, that goes back to something I mentioned earlier, is I think that if Ryan Reeves had stuck with it, I think he was really good in the Skip Sheffield gimmick. I think that worked for him.
He was.
And I think, unfortunately, they decided they didn't like that, and they made him generic monster heel, which they do with too many of these big guys these days, to be honest. They don't have individual characters.
Rusev has foreign. We don't like your passport.
Yes, Rusev works because he has Lana, and the two of them, they sell that foreigner gimmick like crazy. Foreigner gimmicks will always work. That's one of those gimmicks that's immune to the effects of time.
Which I love. Wade Barrett at the moment, BNZ.
Yeah,
he was coming up at the podium. The obvious thing would have been just make him English and say how much he hates America and do the Rusev thing. They didn't. And oh my god, is that amusing as fuck.
Oh, it is. That's great, yeah. And that's the kind of thing that he could pull off because you can tell that fits his personality. He loves being the arrogant heel that can come out and do that. He loves that gimmick. But there's just too many guys that they say, okay, this is going to be your gimmick, and it's not necessarily something they came up with or agree with. It's just a gimmick that they were handed, and it doesn't work. It's like, Damian Sandow was the intellectual savior of the masses. That was kind of cool. He worked it very well. But when Damian Sandow said, hey, why don't I come out in goofy costumes and shit, people ate that up because Damian Sandow loves coming out there in goofy costumes and being silly.
He does, which another aspect as well, I feel, is, I don't mean to discredit the current roster, but I don't know if Marcus would agree with this. A lot of guys nowadays don't have the passion for wrestling, because a lot of people, whenever you hear them talk and stuff, like they talk about, oh yeah, I'm making all this money, or I want to go to WWE and make money, I want to make the money. Whereas back in the day, look at Triple H. Triple H even mentioned he hated the Hunter Hearst Helmsley gimmick.
Yeah.
But he stuck with it because it was getting his foot in the door. It was getting him noticed. He made it work. He embraced it.
That's true.
So it would get over. And most characters, most people, they put them in the gimmicks now, or they try something with them. They don't embrace them as much.
Yeah,
They're
that's
just refusing to do it.
Yeah, that's the same reason Austin got in there as the ringmaster.
Yep. But I meant the actual Hunter Hearst Helmsley thing was a full proper gimmick with the whole, oh yes, and he's doing like the posh thing, which I remember when Marcus watched the War Begins, he's like, the fuck did he just say? When Triple H spoke in the English accent, I'm like, yeah, that was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. He was a posh dude. He was a blue blood. And it's, hence his finisher, the pedigree. And it's like, the fact was, he embraced that and got behind it enough that after a certain point, he could start to evolve it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like Big E, he could easily go with the gimmick he's in right now, and he could embrace it a hell of a lot more, and over time evolve it the same way Undertaker evolved him, the Triple H evolved him, Mick Foley evolved Mankind, and so forth. But the fact is, a load of wrestlers nowadays, in my opinion, just they want the instant success.
Yeah, exactly.
And they want the instant money. They don't want the passion, which I think is also hurting it. But
yeah, and even go back to modern guys, same thing. You know, John Cena. I doubt when he started, John Cena wanted to go out there and be a rapper, but he embraced that because he said, "Okay, that sounds kind of cool. I'll be a rapper," and it worked.
Yep, which it did, and that stuff like that works. But I like Cody right now is getting over with Stardust. Cody, in my opinion, whenever I've heard him
Hey.
Hang on, I was
Cody.
Yeah, but I was being serious. I'm saying whenever Cody speaks, whenever you hear him talk in interviews and stuff, you get the sense, obviously because of who his father is and where his lineage is, he respects the business, he's passionate about it, and therefore they give him something like Stardust, and oh my god, does he fucking embrace the shit out of that.
Oh,
Stardust, and it's wonderful. Hell, he embraced the mask gimmick, he embraced putting bags on people, he embraced dashing.
Oh yeah.
But just to move this on, we'll go to the next category on the 5 list, which was the 4th video. And for this one, I was ready to turn it over to Marcus Shadow.
All right.
Marcus, are you ready?
Say it again.
Just kidding.
I said, Marcus, are you ready? No. This is the new Degeneration X segment.
Yeah, this was actually really interesting because, as I mentioned before, I didn't start watching until the second iteration of DX after Shawn Michaels had injured himself. So it was interesting to see how DX came about. You know, when Triple H first entered the WWE as Hunter Hearst Helmsley and stuff, and his transition from basically Simon with muscles to the game, basically at that point.
Yep.
And you know, and seeing what he and Shawn Michaels is, he how like crude and arrogant Michaels was, and you know, having seen Michaels from the point that he came back to the WWE till now, and then now seeing this stuff, you can kind of see the evolution of the man behind the character, because he has said multiple times on different things of the fact, and even in this video itself, of that he was in a bad place, and he was. You know, it was before he found God and whatever, and you can see the change in Michaels.
He was.
And it's actually kind of interesting.
He was. It's like if you watched the Shawn Michaels documentary about his career and life, he mentions on that he got so addicted to pain pills and drugs and stuff that at one point he was completely passed out on his own sofa, unable to move and just see the world around him. Like he literally couldn't move. That's how much he'd done it. And his own daughter came over to him, his own child, and was like, I think Daddy's dead, and was really crying because he couldn't even speak. That's how bad he was. And he said he took that and he realized that, so he had to clean up his act. And the second he cleaned up his act, like you said, he came back. For Shawn Michaels, it came back where it had all the potential that Shawn Michaels had, but with none of the attitude that Shawn Michaels had. Therefore, he was a hero. He was a damn good guy. And it's almost like the reverse of Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy had those problems and, like we said, all that potential in the world, and he squandered it. Shawn Michaels had that knock on the head that just awakens him.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
I thought that was an interesting story when he mentioned that. But I don't know. What
Yeah.
did you think about Shawn Michaels then to now, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. It was interesting to look at the kind of thing. I mean, I always knew Shawn Michaels had changed because it was kind of brought up a lot around the time when the newer DX reformed, and they had to kind of tone down some of the gimmicks a little bit because Shawn Michaels had said there's a certain things I'm not going to do now that I might have done back then, but I'm not doing now because I'm not that person, and so they had to change a lot of the gimmicks and actually had a little bit of comedy here and there because they had to do funny stuff like Triple H is going to make a dick joke. Oh, hey, Shawn, look, over there, it's Mr. Fuji. Where? And he runs off, and then Triple H makes a dick joke, and then he comes back.
I
And,
will say the funniest one of them was still, and Shawn has blessed it, so it is indeed, holy shit.
there
That one was funny, I will admit. I don't like most of the current DX, but that joke was funny.
you go. So, yeah, but overall, it's interesting to see the evolution of Shawn Michaels and how that worked out. And seeing there was him before and how he the passion he had that he working through as a champion, working through matches with a broken back. I mean, dear God.
Yep, but as he put it, he also had that attitude where he'd suddenly start making faces at the camera and not putting people over as well as he could have.
Right.
We made the joke of Ken Shamrock once put him in an ankle lock and he kept a lollipop in his mouth the whole time. That's a kind of a dick move.
That is a little bit of a dick move.
The closest we came to seeing that dickishness of Shawn Michaels in recent years was when Hulk Hogan said he doesn't want to lose to Shawn Michaels. He's only got one match and he wants to beat him. He doesn't think Shawn Michaels deserves it. So Shawn Michaels spent the entire match overselling like fuck. Like Shawn Michaels hit him, he just bounced the fuck around the ring and died down. And you even see Hulk Hogan getting pissed. And part of me was like, yeah, I know you're not. This isn't quite when you guys have made up. Obviously it wasn't, but part of me was still like, that's for Brett. But back to Marcus.
Indeed.
The Degeneration X.
Yeah. I also liked seeing how the new Degeneration X formed and why, because they were already formed and in the thick of it when I started watching, and so, seeing Triple H have to basically take the reins of it and being like, okay, well, we have this DX juggernaut, and now we only have 2/3 of DX. What the hell am I going to do? And he had already been talking with Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, and it's kind of noticing them and stuff, and he was like, well, I can bring them in. And then, of course, at that time, that's when the Kid decided to come back to WWE, so it's almost like all the chips fell into place for Triple H, and he got just really fucking lucky.
Yeah.
But,
Although I will admit I did not like New DX, as you know.
yes.
They were too different.
Right, but regardless if you liked it or not, it worked. it was popular, and so they got lucky with that.
But
I would make a case of people saying regardless it's popular, therefore it worked. That means you can never insult the Daniel Bryan yes stuff because it's popular, it worked, or Cena.
Pretty much. But I will say, well, despite all that, you do have to admit them dressing up like the Nation of Domination was hilarious.
Like I said, I thought the NWO one was funny. That felt like an NWO ripoff to me.
Fair enough. They didn't show the NWO one, so.
That's when it was like, I think like Shawn Michaels, what do you call it? Shawn Waltman, X-Pac 6, whatever you want to call him. He was dressed as Ric Flair. Kevin Nash was like a fat, out of shape Arn Anderson, and they mocked his Four Horsemen retirement speech. Which, as they said at the time, was dickish as fuck, which Nash has gone on record on one of the things. I think it was on the NWO Legends Roundtable, I think, when he mentioned a story about that, which was funny. After Arn gave his permission, Arn said it was okay, and afterwards he looked at Arn, and Arn was just like, sort of looking at him like, that kind of hurt my feelings, but it's okay, I still respect you enough to let this go. He said, then he had a segment later on where Arn had to run out and hit him. And he said, and he fucking clobbered me right in the kidney. He didn't even pull that punch. And I was like, oh, and I went down. And he said, and afterwards, when I spoke to him afterwards, he was like, he was okay with the segment. He liked the segment, but that was just his way of getting me back. And I appreciate that.
There you go.
It could have been much worse. But I like stories like that.
That's a good story.
So what you're saying is it was a function of, yeah, I'm going to let you do it because I'm going to kick your ass when I come out there.
No, because it wasn't in the same night. This was like later on.
Oh,
He just
okay,
got his
fair
revenge later on. But it was more like Arn Anderson respected that he was retiring and he was passing the torch to a new generation, which a lot of people won't do. He was
Yeah.
okay with them mocking his personal life, even if it did get a little too personal for him.
Mhm.
But it still worked. Like, it was fucking hilarious. Like X-Pac mocking Ric Flair when he was crying. He literally puts his hands over his eyes, and each time you can tell he's filtering water through, and water just comes down his fucking eyes. Funniest thing X-Pac ever did.
Nice.
Nice.
But like I said, whether or not I liked it doesn't really matter. I was just saying
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but you could
Yeah,
see
that
the
was fair enough.
differences, so you can see why
Yeah.
some would and some wouldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and it's good knowing how some people, and similar to me, the stories of people, oh, cool, the gimmick. It's like they told a story during the during the video of how they went out. They did the DX went out and did the Nation thing, and they went in the back, and Mark Henry looked at X-Pac, and he just fell over laughing.
Yeah, because like Mark Henry said, I know funny when I see it, and that was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I enjoy the DX stuff because, it allowed me to look kind of at DX as a whole. Now, I do own the DX DVD, the first one. I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't remember how much of this was actually covered in that.
There was some of it covered. The original DX one, it's also worth noting with that, because I have that too. This is more real, if that makes sense, because that one, as you'll notice, like with one of the Austin ones, and I have an Undertaker one from the same era where it's narrated as if it's real, and it's like they were in character the whole time. Like they were doing like no, hit the thing, no, get rid of the blips, and do all that sort of. This is more like pulling the curtain back, if you will. So I think this one would have benefited you a little bit more, if that makes sense, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can understand. I can see that, and I could agree with that. I really did enjoy it, and just seeing all the little behind the scenes stuff, and seeing how DX came about because of the Monday Night War and how they impacted the Monday Night War and stuff was kind of cool to see. And like I said, all the Triple H, Shawn Michaels stuff, the pre-mob mentality, DX Army, whatever, that was kind of interesting to see. I have to wonder if I would have liked the original incarnation of DX as much as I liked the one that I saw. Now having seen it, I don't know how much of that is being filtered through the fact that I'm now like 10 years older. And I'm looking at it from like almost middle age saying, yeah, that might have been a little too much attitude.
You see, I was of the opinion that I liked the heel DX because with Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and the original stuff because it worked. They were edgy, they were dickish, but they were deliberately in your face trying to provoke you. And I like that aspect. Like there was even a part on the original DX, which I'm not sure if this was covered on that, where they sat on the fucking stage holding up parody crowd signs.
Ah, nice.
That's just genius. Shawn Michaels stuck the Canadian flag up his nose. He did that to piss Brett off, and it worked. And it's like, but when DX reformed, they were now faces. So they were all doing stuff where they wanted you to like it, like they were pissing on bikes just because it was funny. There wasn't anything there to provoke people. I felt they lost a little bit their edge. It's sort of like seeing Austin when there's not a McMahon.
Yeah. And I can understand that.
But at the same time, I can understand some people really did like that. I know someone who liked DX when they reformed all the way up until, besides McMahon Helmsley era, because everyone's going to forget DX during that era, all the way up to when they reformed.
Yeah. Oh god, Big Man Helmsley was just no.
Where every week it would be The Rock goes out and beats X-Pac, Road Dogg, and Billy Gunn in a handicap match. Then Austin does, then Undertaker does, then Mankind does. And it's like, why are they jobbing them?
Yeah.
Even Big Show did at one point. And I say even Big Show, because Big Show now, fair enough, to a certain degree. But Big Show then wasn't really that the same Big Show, if that makes sense.
No, he was
It was like, why are you wasting these people on him?
more Kali status back then.
He was. Which part of it, I believe, was his disease.
Mm.
Because they had touched upon that, which I was talking, interestingly enough, about that to James, I believe, the other day,
Yes.
where they mentioned, look at Big Show when he debuted. Do you notice how big his face was? Not just in weight, just height-wise, his face was, and how huge he was. Part of that was he had the same disease that Andre the Giant had, that killed him. But nowadays they can cure it, and when they cured it, he became better in the ring and stuff because he could do more. He was more proportionate. He didn't have the giant-itis, or whatever you call it, and it just worked. Which I'm not saying that would, you know what I mean? It's no disrespect to Andre the Giant. It's just a shame that he wasn't around in our time because he would have got cured.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I did like what they did with the DX stuff. Although I do have one negative thing about the new DX video.
Okay.
They really glossed over China.
Yeah, they did.
Mm. Well, like you said earlier, they don't want to bring that up and have little kids go and Google China.
Yeah, but what happens if they go and Google Sean Waltman,
True.
who was in One Night in China?
I also
Which
find
is
it
a total
funny
remake.
that. Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead. Well,
No, it's cool. You go.
I was gonna say I find it kind of funny you use that argument, Jim. When we're talking about the video where WWE themselves turns around and says, "Yes, and we decided to use a porn star for a gimmick because that was cool."
True.
Yeah.
It's like, really? So in the video where they're going to introduce fucking Val Venus and the Godfather, you're worried about them Googling China.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
part of that is Val Venus going out there and pretending to be a porn star.
Yeah,
China
well.
is a porn star.
True.
It's like Undertaker goes out there and pretends to be a corpse. I don't want WWE to show me corpses every week.
True.
Yeah, we saw how that turned out.
Yeah, they call it the Hall of Fame every year.
Oh.
I'm sorry, was that too mean?
Well, no, given the fact and who the big inductee is this year, that might have been just a tad mean. What, only me? Okay, fair enough.
No. I was agreeing with you. I was just muted because I had to plug my charger in because my headset was going beep, beep, beep.
Fair enough.
But, yeah, the new DX stuff.
Well, like I said, I like the video, and I like the series as a whole, so the X stuff was cool.
Nice.
Back to those.
Okay. And I know Jim has a soft spot in his heart for him. Jim, did you want to have a nice day?
It was interesting. I think we all commented like that. It was interesting they chose to focus the episode on Mankind when they hadn't on some of the other larger superstars of the era thus far. But it was really interesting to learn more about the evolution of his characters and to see even just clips of those interviews with Jim Ross that were like really, really dramatic and really well done. And seeing how it started off with the Mankind thing and how he came up with the name Mankind and how that worked out and kind of built it from there as opposed to his original Cactus Jack character before bringing that back later. How Dude Love was his childhood hero character and he got to bring Dude Love to the ring. And it was great to just see the story unfold in front of you and to realize how far he came and how much worked out in his favor to make the faces of Foley what they are.
He was. I think the reason, looking at it in hindsight a little bit, just because of what's coming up, I think the reason they concentrated on Mick Foley was due to that one line of, and over on WWE, Mick Foley's going to win the World Heavyweight Championship. You remember him, he wrestled here on Cactus Jack. Yeah, like that'll put butts in the seats.
Mm-hmm.
Which made the WWE get their first victory. So I think that's why they were concentrating on to make people understand who the character was.
Right.
For that moment to seem bigger, which I feel like WWE glosses over the fact on that line of they weren't doing it to discredit Mankind personally. It was a business decision because they'd done that with all their decisions. But it seems like WWE focused on this one because they won as a result of this, and then various other stuff later on. But with this was their first victory, I feel like they want to rewrite that to seem like, oh my god, the villain was slayed.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's the sense I get. But I do think the Mick Foley video was interesting to see, like you said, the various gimmicks that he's had and where some of them came from, and his I personally, the part I liked because I had seen all that was I liked the reactions of Mick Foley and the stories about the backstage stuff, and like how he mentioned what Mankind was going to look like, and he was going to be called something like the Pulverizer or something like that. It's like I kind of like what he did, and it's like I like how he mentioned Vince went up to him one day and goes, "You're going to be Dude Love," and he's like, "Oh, for a day?" And Vince is like, "No, from now on." And his face, you can tell he was happy.
Indeed, I didn't know that was a childhood thing that he got to
Yeah,
have a
neither did I.
childhood dream come true and stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. And honestly, despite whatever reasoning they may have used to give him an episode, I think Mick Foley deserved one.
Oh, I do agree. Mick Foley definitely deserved one. I just didn't. I thought like maybe the Austin one would have been first.
Yeah. But I'm thinking they're keeping that to last because of what he did in the invasion and stuff. At least that's my guess.
They might do. Which, yeah, I only knew that the Mick Foley thing with Dude Love was his childhood thing because of I still remember those video packages where they showed him jumping off stuff as Dude Love, and then how they reworked that in with the storylines on TV because I'd seen that firsthand, if that makes sense. But I still found the backstage stuff that they mentioned interesting, like the look at what the costume was going to be like for Mankind and stuff.
Yeah.
And I still found something slightly funny with the Mankind one. I can't remember if it was on this, though, or if this was on one of the podcasts I'd watched, well, video roundtables I'd watched.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember Mick Foley talking about Farouk. I don't think this was in this one, was it?
I don't think so. What did he say?
He talked about Farouk, and he's like, Ron Simmons came up to me. He was so happy that he said to me, "Hey, you know the person who made your mask? Yeah, is that such and such?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, they just designed my new headwear." And Mick Foley's like, "Oh, great! He's gonna have something similar to me. That's gonna be amazing. Maybe we could work together." And then he comes out, and it's a blue fucking Sparta helmet.
Nice.
That was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous gimmick for him. I'm sorry, that was a ridiculous gimmick.
Sounds ridiculous.
It was, but so overall impressions now, and we shall start with Marcus. Overall, the first 5 so far, with like what you've seen in these videos and stuff.
Well, I think that they've been very well produced and very informative. I think that I don't know if I like how they've organized it though. I can understand why, because each episode is themed to a specific wrestler or a specific group or a specific thing they're talking about. But to me, it oftentimes, at least watching just the first 5 episodes, it's felt disjointed a little bit because they go through, like, say, DX. They go through the entire DX story, which spans pretty much the entirety of the Monday Night War. And I almost feel like I had wished that they had gone in chronological order of events that happened at certain times. But I don't know if that would have worked because they wanted the episode to focus on DX or on Mick Foley or something. So I'm kind of torn because it feels disjointed, but I understand why, if that makes sense.
I completely understand what you're going for with that. I personally would like the incontinuity or stuff like that as well. But I think this way does work more better because, like, you're watching NWO, let's say, and like you said, oh my god, it's the whole NWO story. I feel that story would be lost in the actual breaking up to go like, this was happening around here, this was happening around then. You wouldn't get the same stories, which the best documentaries in the world, in my opinion, tell a story.
Yeah.
whether or not it's one they've manufactured or whether or not it's one that's actually there, they tell a story, and I feel that's what they're going for with this, and I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. But I also would have liked, you know, you mean like you said, I would have liked to see them in continuity in terms or in actual timeline. But I know, what does Jim think?
I agree. But no, yeah. Overall, I really like the look that it's given us over the course of it. You know, establishing everything, building it up, and everything. I really enjoy the.
Well, I meant, how did you feel about the continuity thing versus the story packaging? Because I think Marcus
with that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I thought you were ordering my things and the whole thing. Sorry.
Marcus is still going with his final thing, and I'll cut
Okay.
it.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were cutting. I thought you were cutting over to me. I thought Marcus had finished. Yeah, I can understand. I mean, it's understandable that given, like you said earlier, the winners write the history, so it's understandable that the continuity might be, you know, a little.
We meant like Marcus said about how it's not in terms of when it happened; it's in terms of full stories per episode.
It's more like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, your entire series is called The Monday Night War. But as I'm watching this, I'm not getting a sense really that your focus is the Monday Night War. It's your focus is more these character stories within the Monday Night War. And I'm sitting here sometimes thinking, what is it you're trying to accomplish, WWE? What is your ultimate focus and goal with this? And I feel it's kind of disjointed because they chose to focus on more the superstars and these specific like life stories within the confines of the Monday Night War instead of the Monday Night War itself. But at the same time, it is these stories that then turn around and comprise the entire story of the Monday Night War. So it's kind of weird.
It is, but I think that was the point. Is that the Monday Night Wars are, you know, if you were covered it continuity-wise and walked through it, that would be fine. But the thing is, there's so much more to it than just that. And basically, if you were going through that, it would take, you know, you'd have to cover like 9 different stories in each episode, and it would take too long. I think the way they did it makes sense because you can look at each individual aspect of the Monday Night Wars as it happened. Look at this aspect, that aspect, so on and so forth. And there's a little bit of chronology to it. And then I think at the end they're going to come back around and say these are all the different aspects happened. All things happened. These all made up the Monday Night Wars. This is how it all comes together, and kind of bring it all around because they're building on it each time. They start with okay, WCW arose. The next one is WCW arose, and then this happened. Then WCW arose, and Attitude came in response. And then WCW arose, Attitude came in response, and then there was. And NWO was there. Then NWO came, Attitude in response, and then DX was there. And they're like, it's sort of like they're adding to it each time as they go. They're adding a little bit each time they go through it to kind of slowly as you go. Like they always give you like a retrospective of at the beginning of each episode. This is the stuff we already covered, and now we're expanding on it from here. And this is the next relevant thing that happened, and kind of go from there. So they're going back a little bit and forward a little bit to establish where they are for each of the aspects. But it feels like they're just kind of adding on each aspect on top of each other to build what at the end will be one complete picture.
I can see that, but back to Marcus.
Yeah, but you know, as if you watch the episodes like separately, I think each of the videos it's very well done. It's very well produced. It's concise. It, for the most part, tells the facts. I mean, again, as we've been saying this entire podcast, yeah, some of it is kind of biased. It's WWE. It's going to be. But I think of anything I've seen them produce in terms of kind of behind-the-scenes stuff or kind of telling the stories of certain superstars or gimmicks or, you know, what have you, I think this one has been the most real and the most honest, and I appreciate that. And it sheds a lot of light onto probably one of the best eras in professional wrestling. And you get to see everything that happened, right, wrong, or otherwise. And it's very well done, and I look forward to seeing, you know, more episodes because it is such a well-produced series.
And I could see that. And how about you, Jim? What are your final thoughts on the full 5?
Well, like I started saying, I think it was a really interesting look at how the wars evolved and how each aspect is important, while at the same time using that aspect to build on the previous aspects to form this full picture of the wars. I do agree it's a little bit disjointed, yes, but I think when you're covering something as expansive as the Monday Night Wars, there's not really overall a perfect way to cover it. you're kind of left with a series of options that each have their own downsides. Like you could start chronologically, but then you've got to start, okay, chronologically this happened. Okay, the NWO is here. Well, the NWO happened, this happened, and you got to cover too many things in each episode and have all these continuing stories running at the same time to build it up. Like, yeah, you're going to talk about the formation of the NWO here, and you're going to hear the NWO is doing this over the course of these few months. But at the same time, you've got to remember to mention, oh, by the way, Mick Foley debuted as Cactus Jack at WCW at this time, so that people know who you're talking about when you get to the part where he jumps and becomes Mankind. It would be way too convoluted and complex to make it work. By doing it this way, they take, okay, this is our individual topic for the episode. We're going to focus on this aspect of the wars. We're going to show how it relates to the other aspects and how it built upon that and how that contributed to the continuing of the wars and go from there. And I think the formatting really worked well. In terms of these first 5, it gives you a really well-rounded idea of a lot of the things that made the wars special. The desperation of WCW to get ratings, the desperation of WWE not to lose their ratings, the willingness to try almost anything, the willingness of superstars to go out there and do things that, they're surprised at being the things that they were permitted to do. The superstars, what they did to get over, the stuff that they were, like I said, permitted to do. Who these people were and how their characters evolved and how that became relevant and why they were important to how the wars evolved, so on and so forth. It's just a really interesting, just complex picture coming together of how this whole thing went down, and I think it's really good so far.
Fair enough. That leaves me, and I'll say, yeah, like I mentioned, and Jim said it then as well, there's pros and cons to both ways of doing this. I think the other aspect is what they're doing with the Monday Night Wars, with how it's structured and how they're doing it is, let's say, I don't know, Marcus gets home from work, say Monday, or no, not Monday, let's say Tuesday. He gets home from work Tuesday, he has nothing on TV, he has like an hour to kill, boom, he pops on a Monday Night War documentary. In that hour, he gets a complete story, he feels like he's just experienced a documentary. Otherwise, he'll just walk away feeling like, okay, I know a little tiny piece, and all the details will go, you know what I mean? They'll be all bogged down. So I feel like they structured it right for both binge watching and also for people who just want to watch an episode like once a week or something like that, or as we're doing it like a couple of weeks and stuff like that to get through to review all these. But I also feel, yeah, it's a little biased in part, but I did expect it. It's not as biased as I thought it would be, but it's still a little biased. But I'm still enjoying these, and I think part of the reason I'm enjoying these is I'm looking at the other aspect of I know most of this because I watched it happen. But it's cool to sit down and watch it with you guys and be able to tell you stories and stuff as we're watching it and talk and stuff like you guys be like, oh, I don't remember that, and I can be like, yeah, I remember that, and I remember this coming out of it and stuff like that. So it's got the social element as well, where it's like what I've experienced, I'm sharing with you guys, which I think it's kind of an important aspect too. So it's cool for all elements, and I enjoy that. And I like the production values, even though some parts are taken from elsewhere, but I do like how it's structured, so I'm looking forward to doing more.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole, the whole interactive aspect, and WWE's been trying to move toward the interactivity. And I think this is a great way to do it, as you pointed out, to allow people who have been longtime fans of WWE and wrestling in general, and allow them to sit down and be able to experience and enjoy wrestling as it is today with people who like us, who haven't been around, who haven't seen things from that far back, and to share those experiences and say, this is why wrestling is cool. And I think that's a pretty awesome thing to be able to do.
Yep. But next time we'll have another 5 for you. And it'll be these two joining me again. We don't know if someone else might. We hope Richter will eventually join us for one of these. We don't know, but stay tuned. I was your host, Chriz, aka the Mole. I thank Jim and Marcus for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And I think this is a series we're doing because we decided to do the Monday Night Wars thing. A, because it was a cool documentary to look at, and B, it's all leading to WrestleMania month. Ooh. I'd point at the WrestleMania sign, but you can't see me. So, and that wasn't me quote. Yeah, I was gonna say that wasn't me quoting Cena, but or as I'm gonna call him in his new T-shirt, Big Blue, Big Blue. But
Okay then.
He's not Piccolo. I can't call him Big Green, Big Blue, Big Red.
Oh, I thought you were making an Eric Rowan joke. Fair enough.
I was making a horribly dubbed Dragon Ball Z joke. Big Green,
Fair enough.
Big Blue. But no. The Big Blue Boy Scout. We can finally call him it.
Oh.
No.
There you
Superman?
go.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We can finally call it him. That was the point. But yeah, I was your host, Chriz the Mole, and stay tuned, enjoy, and leave your comments below. See ya. Why are we still live?
That's the reason I missed what Marcus said earlier, because my computer is screwed up. Hang on.
Live, people. So did you guys catch that Super Bowl match?
Fuck you.
That wasn't the joke I was making. I was making more the joke at the second we're talking about wrestling during this podcast, and the second we're live and like this, where we're just extra time to kill, we turn around and go, so let's talk about something else, and we just talk about football. Can you really not end it?
I'm trying. I literally just task manager force closed Firefox, and the call kept going.
Oh god.
Alrighty then.
I have an idea.
Yeah, a sec. Firefox is working. I might be able to close it now. Give me 1 sec.
Oh, okay.
I just gotta get back into events. Somewhere. Home events.
Can you just copy and paste your own link, since that would be the last thing you copied and pasted?
I didn't think of that. That's a valid point.
Question: if we all leave the okay, there we go. He's back. I'm gonna say if we all leave the call, would that not end it?
We're still live.
Okay, hang on. Because I made it back in. Okay.
Yes, we can see that. Literally.
Yeah, I know. Okay, good night, folks.